Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Michelle and I'm so glad you decided to join me here in my happy space. This is a place where I share cozy, comforting recipes and a little bit of my everyday life. So if you are looking to get inspired in the kitchen or you just want to get a brain break, grab your apron, get in your kitchen, and let's bake some babka. As you know, I have recently just become obsessed with babka. I discovered it on a trip to Chicago and now I just want to make it all the time and try different variations. So that's what we're gonna do today. I just learned how to make this and now I'm gonna teach it to you. So we are gonna start with a half cup of warm milk into our stand mixer. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of white sugar. And then we also need 2.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast. So like a bread machine yeast or like those little packets that you see. 2.5 teaspoons of that. For the milk and sugar yeast mixture, we're gonna use the whisk. This will be for later for kneading. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach this. And we're just gonna whisk this together for a couple of minutes. And then I'm gonna let it sit so that it can get frothy. Okay, so that's good. We're gonna let that sit for like 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and measure out my flour. There is a big controversy around how you're supposed to measure your flour and use a spoon and blah, blah, blah. I haven't been baking forever, okay? I've probably been baking for like 6 years. I don't use a spoon. Like I just find that too time consuming. So I'm gonna show you how I measure my flour. We scoop. Fill your cup up. You want to make sure that your measuring cup is full. You are just going to take something with a flat edge, shift your flour back and forth, and push off the excess. Tap, tap, tap. Make sure all the air pockets are full. A full cup of flour. It has never failed me. For this recipe, I'm using all-purpose flour. I don't know if you can use bread flour because I have not tried that, but this AP flour worked out just fine for me. That's what I would recommend you do. Okay, it's looking nice and bubbly. So just so you can see what this should look like before you move on, it's frothy on the top and you see it's like starting to bubble and get a little bit thicker. That's what we're looking for. So in our mixing bowl, we're gonna add the rest of our sugar. So this is 4 tablespoons of sugar. And then we're using 2 eggs plus 1 egg yolk. It pains me a little bit to do this because eggs are so expensive. I feel like I'm wasting, but you gotta do it for the babka, right? 1 egg yolk. And I just realized too that I was a little bit premature in changing this attachment. We still need the whisk because obviously we have to mix our eggs together. So let's put that back on. All right, so now that we have that back on there, we're gonna add in a teaspoon of vanilla. Normally I would use a vanilla bean paste, but I'm all out of it right now, so this will just have to do. So we're just gonna mix this on low until the eggs are all incorporated into that milk mixture. Now we can safely take off our whisk attachment because we are done with it for real this time. All right, so I'm going to dump in my flour. And then we're gonna add in about 1.25 teaspoons of salt. And just dump that right on top. Right. Your kneading attachment is on. And we are gonna knead this for 5 minutes on low. While that's going, I have a stick of butter here. We're just using 1/4 cup, so that is half of the stick of butter. I'm gonna cut it into slices, and this is room temperature. And I'm just going to like shovel it in one by one. And then once I do that, we're gonna knead for 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to cover it and let it proof. I'm gonna add this butter in, one little flick at a time. And we're just using half of this stick. Okay, and then we're kneading again for 5 more minutes. All right, so I think that is good. That's what our dough is looking like right now. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of oil into here, and I'm gonna cover it and leave it alone. I'm gonna let it proof. You can either let this proof overnight in the refrigerator, just do plastic wrap on top, or you can leave it out. I'm gonna put mine in the refrigerator just because I know I'm not gonna have time to roll this until tonight. You'll see me in just a minute rolling this out, but I'm gonna leave this in my refrigerator covered for about probably like 5 hours. Also, this is my favorite olive oil. If you ever see this brand, grab it. It's wonderful. They also have a bunch of other products, and I'll show you how much oil I put in here. Just about that much. You don't need too much. Make sure it's covered. Cover it in the oil. That is what she's looking like. All right, I'll be back. All right, so we're back a whole day later, 24 whole hours later. I ended up letting this proof overnight. I thought I was gonna get to it last night. I didn't. I was exhausted, but it's totally fine. I thought I was recording just now too, and I already punched it down, but it doubled in size. But like I said, I did already punch it down. So I'm just gonna set this aside and let it come to room temperature while I show you guys how to make that hot fudge filling. We are starting with chocolate. This is a brick of milk chocolate that I got from Peterbrook Chocolatiers. So I'm just gonna give this a rough chop. That should be good. A little bit more than I needed. All right, so we've got our half cup there. A stick of butter, and I'm gonna put this in the microwave. I'm gonna melt it in 30-second increments. So we'll start with 30 seconds. If we need more time, then we'll add it then. So I'm just gonna stir this together. You just wanna stir it together until the chocolate and the butter combine, until they come together. Make sure you don't microwave this for too long. Like 30 seconds at a time really is fine. And honestly, after the first 30 seconds, I would say you do 15 seconds because you don't want your chocolate to burn. Now that that's combined, I'm gonna throw in a little bit of sea salt. And then we're also gonna add in a little bit of cocoa powder. Just dump that right in, no need to sift that. Just a little bit of vanilla, just to kind of cut that bitterness from the cocoa powder. Okay, now we're not gonna use this immediately. We're gonna let this sit out on the counter to get to room temperature so that it becomes something that is more like a thicker paste. It smells so good. All right, there she is. She's perfect. Look at that. I'm no pastry chef, but I'd say that's perfect. Okay, we're going into voiceover mode here. I don't know what happened to the audio and some of these clips, but this babka recipe makes 2 babkas, but you could probably stretch it to 3. What I'm doing here is cutting it in half. I'm gonna make 1 full-size babka, and the other half I'm going to split into 4 to make 4 mini babkas so that I can try out some different fillings. Now working with the first full-size babka, I'm going to try to roll it out into a rectangular shape. Do your best to make it even on all sides because it'll make it easier for you when you get to the point of rolling it up. And speaking of rolling it up, when you get to the point where you're adding in the filling, make sure that you're generous, but don't overdo it because the more filling you put in, the harder it will be to roll. And when you're rolling it up, you want to make sure that the dough stays tight. If you've ever made cinnamon rolls, it's pretty much exactly like that. Let's roll it up. And like I said, whenever I'm making these, I get a little bit intimidated when I get to this step, so I try to be very precise in the way that I'm rolling it. After every couple of rolls forward, I always try to pinch the dough down toward the filling just to make sure that I'm still getting a tight roll. Okay, so now the next step of a babka is put it seam side down, okay? And you get whatever you're gonna cut this with. You can use a serrated knife or you can use one of these. Cut it directly down the middle. Then we're separating into 2 logs. Okay. And just stretch it out a little bit. And you're gonna lay one across the other like an X. And then we're crossing. Pinch the edges. And we're just tucking that underneath. Now that it's beautifully braided up, we do need to let it proof once more for an hour. So I'm putting the babka in a loaf pan that I sprayed with nonstick spray and lined with parchment paper inside my oven with the power off. This is how she's looking after the second proof. It's doubled in size, which is exactly what we want. And at this point, we're going to start preheating our oven and brush the top of this with an egg wash. Bake the babka at 350 degrees for about 35 to 45 minutes. Immediately out of the oven, douse the top of it with the simple syrup. Wow. And look how gorgeous this is. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I would absolutely love it if you subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.